questions from the group. Other arguments from proponents and opponents of question 4 deal with tax and spending processes, that is, the extent to which voters themselves and not their elected representatives should ultimately decide tax and spending levels. From your point of view, why is this good or bad?
Well, I'm always amazed that folks who are perfectly happy having the citizens vote for them and make that wise decision are not wise enough to make decisions about tax policy. That I was always sort of confused by that approach and that philosophy. There is a problem with the way the legislature does its budgets, and that is because while you folks are all busy at work running your businesses and employing people and taking care of your families, there is an army of lobbyists in Augusta whose job it is to hang around in the halls over there and sit in the halls of the Appropriations Committee room and try and squeeze money out of legislators. And they are very successful at doing that. I mean, this process is badly broken. You know, we started looking, as we started this campaign, we were keeping track of our opposition and what they were saying and who they were, and we started seeing, I'll give you an example of this, we started seeing a couple of op-eds from Pike Industries, this guy from Pike Industries. This is a New Hampshire-based construction company writing these op-eds in the paper saying Tabor's a terrible thing. So we thought to ourselves, why does a New Hampshire-based construction company care about Tabor and Maine? So we went on our MaineOpenGov.org website, which has all state contracts on it, and we found that Pike Industries has received more than $80 million in state contracts in the last 3 years. $80 million. So then we started looking at the rest of our opponents and trying to figure out what the motivation there might be. So we went, this is not something you were supposed to do in campaigns, but I'm going to encourage you to go to the MaineCanDoBetter.org website, which is one of the opposition websites. And you can skip down all the sort of propaganda in the middle and go to the bottom of the webpage. And you have this enormous list of 150 some odd organizations that are in this coalition that opposes us. So we said, well, who are these folks? So we took that list and we went to the Internal Revenue Service and we looked at their Form 990s. They're all nonprofits, and nonprofits are required to file these federal forms that indicate where their revenue comes from. And they have to indicate where the revenue, whether it's private sector revenue or public sector revenue. So we had a group of 100 and however many it was organizations. We found over 100 of them that received government funding. So the majority of those organizations receive government funding. And when we looked at the percent of their funding that is from government sources, the majority of that group receives 80% or more of their revenue from government sources. So when you see, don't vote on Tabor, oppose Tabor, Tabor's going to hurt us, look carefully at who is saying that. I don't know that people who don't spend a lot of time in Augusta have a very good idea of the immense size of the population of folks or the organizations of folks who either live off taxpayer dollars or benefit in some way from taxpayer spending. It's an enormous group, and they are in permanent residence at the State House, and they have offices around the Capitol complex. They are there all the time. So I don't have any problem with Maine people making these decisions outside the walls of the State House, back in their communities. And if they want to raise spending, that's fine. I'm fine with that. Tabor allows you to raise spending even without going to voters. But
So just for the record, the Maine Center for Economic Policy in recent years have had no money from state government. We have on a couple of occasions over a 15-year period had, I'm remembering, a particular contract for $30,000 and another one for $6,000, just in full disclosure.
we haven't had any government money at my office.
They get lots of money from people from away who want to push their ideology all over the country. But the point really is this odd notion that private sector businesses who provide services to the government are somehow suspect. Do we hold Bath Iron Works and General Dynamics suspect because they get big Navy contracts? I thought that was good economic development for the state of Maine, and I thought our entire legislative delegation fights hard for those contracts, and that we should be happy about the people who work at Bath Iron Works. But suddenly now they're on the public dole, and we should be ashamed of them because they get public money. Now, here in Bangor region, I would think that we would notice that the largest employers include the University of Maine, Eastern Maine Medical, and the other hospital, and wonder again, are they doing some kind of bad work that we shouldn't have any public money going to them? Should we be ashamed of their receiving public dollars? I don't think so. And so this is an odd notion that the private sector is good so long as they're not providing any public service whatsoever. But the minute they take any public dollars, then they're somehow suspect and we shouldn't listen to their opinions. And it's a notion of the economy that doesn't make sense. that the Maine economy will be better off if we only have a private sector. So let's get rid of the University of Maine. Now, in Colorado this year, they are debating eliminating all public support for the University of Colorado and the community colleges because of the constraints on Tabor and their inability with keeping up with their traditional support for their university and community college system. That doesn't seem like a route to prosperity, and I don't recommend it for a relatively poor state like Maine. Most business leaders recommend that further investments in higher education, which, by the way, could mean some jobs in this region, is a good thing for the state to support. Steve doesn't think so. He'd like us to just go private, so we'll all be at the mercy of Bowdoin and Bates and Colby, and we'll pay those tuitions because we won't have a public system.
Thank you, Kip. Senator West.
Thank you. To provide more disclosure, I need to tell you that my family has been blessed by taxpayers' dollars the entire time. My husband has been a teacher or principal in a public school, and now I've been in the legislature, so our money does come from tax dollars. However, that doesn't mean that I believe that I should be out there lobbying for more dollars. Now, I could. My husband would want to sit here and say, how difficult it is to keep good teachers at the kind of salary District 3 is allowed to pay. But there is something that's bigger than some of the discussion we've had here. And it's just this word called balance. We have to have balance in our homes, in our checkbooks. What has happened is we've lost the long-term view of prosperity. We've taken lots of gimmicks, and we've come to think that the only true balance or predictability in income is if you work for a government entity or you get your money from a government entity. I know what it's like for people who are out there in the private sector because I hear from them every day. They do not have a Cadillac plan for health care like I do, my husband does. There is a difference between what we are doing with government tax dollars and what the private sector is able to do. What Tabor's plan is to make that more real and let people take that understanding, that transparency, and make better decisions.
Thank you. Representative Mark.
Thank you very much. I don't want to get into this debate or this notion that we keep trying to, the proponents of Tabor keep trying to put us in, is that if we don't allow the voters to decide on every decision that the legislature or your town council or your county commissioners make, then somehow there's a flawed process in which people are on the take. In my first year in the legislature, I come from my education is a social work background. I want to talk to you about some of the lobbyists. That the word lobbyist gets thrown around a lot, and also the coalition partners of those on the No on 4 campaign. They are domestic violence groups working to protect women who are in abusive situations. They are programs that are working to identify high-risk kids at risk of child abuse and working to intervene and improve their lives down the road. They are agencies providing senior services and to the elderly that need Meals on Me for their homes, and people who are homebound, they need home nursing care. So when we throw around this term as lobbyists as if it's something nasty and horrible that we shouldn't be affiliated with, we need to understand that there are a lot of people in Augusta who are also advocating on behalf of everyday average citizens and the people of Maine. And when I was elected, and when I ran, I wanted to be a voice and an advocate for those people. Yes, do I have the Heritage Policy Center coming up and trying to persuade me on tax policy? Do I have the chamber encouraging me this way or that on a particular bill? Absolutely. We have a representative government. And every organization and group has a right to lobby their elected officials on their perspective on a particular issue. I may not agree with them every time, but I may also agree with them on sometimes. I don't agree with my party every time on issues. But that is the representative democracy process that we have. It means nothing. It doesn't mean that I don't trust the voters to make those decisions. It means that they entrusted me to go to Augusta and represent them to the best of my ability, and that's what I've tried to do. And I think that Tabor takes that process away by finding a backdoor route so that if they don't like what the legislature passes, then we can get and automatically generate $1 million statewide election, and then we can run everything in a 30-second television ad and put a bumper sticker on your car that says, "Are you fed up with taxes?" And then suddenly that becomes the debate and not the real heart of the real issues of the services and the needs of the people of Maine.
Thank you, Representative Martin. We'll have